Hello children. In last session, we have studied about the early calculating devices of computers. Now we will study the generation of computers, how the computer that we are using today in our homes or in offices or wherever it is required, how that computer came into the existence. Fine. So let us start. Okay, so the difference engine and analytical engine that was developed by the Charles Babbage, it acted as the base for the development of the future generations. Now it was not like the computer which you are using now in your homes. It was the very first development of computer in the computer series. No, it was not like that. For earlier, some inventions were done, and that inventions also had some issues, some faults. Then it was again corrected. Then again it was corrected. Then again some changes were done. Similarly, like that, the computer which you are using now in your homes, that came into existence. Okay. Now the we have studied that the part 1 of this chapter, that is the calculating devices. Now we are moving to the part 2, that is the classification of computers. Okay, on the basis of technology used, computers were classified as the first generation computers. It was the between the 1946 till 1958. Okay, till from 1946 to 1958 these computers were used. Okay, then the second generation computers, that second generation computers were used between 1956 to 1963. Okay, then the third generation computers 1964 to 1971, then the fourth generation computers, that is 1971 onwards, and then the fifth generation computers. Now one by one we are going to study all of these generations in detail. Okay. Okay, so the next very first topic we are going to study is the first generation computers. Okay, now the first generation computers used vacuum tubes. Before going to vacuum tubes, let me tell you one thing, that you have studied the analytical engine and difference engine in the earlier session, right? So you know that how large was the size of that both engines, right? Okay, so the very first generation computers used vacuum tubes. Now what is the vacuum tubes? It is a device that allows and controls the flow of the electric current to all the devices. Okay, it is a device that allows or controls the flow of the electric current in through the all devices. Okay, now their speed was very slow. The first generation computers which was developed had their speed very slow. Okay, now the third point is these computers were very large in size. These computers were very large in size, and also it was difficult to handle them, and also it was difficult to handle them. Since it was very large in size, it required much patience and much time to handle them, to maintain them. That's why they had their speed very slow. Okay, the only thing we have to remember here is that the first generation computers used vacuum tubes. Okay, and their speed was very slow. Okay, now since they were large in size, and since they were large in size, they occupied much space, they required much space. Okay, and since they occupied much space, it was very difficult to handle them, and also it was very difficult to maintain them. Okay, now further, some of the examples of the first generation computers are Mark 1, ENIAC, UNIVAC 1. These all three, these all three first generation computers we are going to study further. Okay, fine. Now moving on further, in the first generation computers, you need to study the three examples of the first generation computers, that is Mark 1, ENIAC and UNIVAC 1. Okay. Now, under the Mark 1, I have made this table so you can easily understand what is the thing in Mark 1, what are the things in ENIAC and what are the things in UNIVAC 1. Okay. Now, Mark 1, it was developed by Howard Aikens. It is the name of the scientist and it was developed in 1943. And then ENIAC, it was developed, we will come to ENIAC afterwards. First let us complete the Mark 1. Okay. Now it was 15 meters long. 15 meters, so imagine how long it must be, how long it must be in size. Okay, it was 15 meters long. And how many wires were used for connecting its parts? Around 800 kilometer long wires. Just imagine the computer which you are using now in your home. How many wires do you use? And just imagine, have a scenario in your mind that how many wires this computer were required, how many wires were required by this computer to connect its devices, and how many wires you are using now in your home to connect your computer parts. Okay, so you can imagine how long or how huge in size it must be. Okay, it was fully automatic. Okay, Mark 1 computer was fully automatic. And then I have put one image of the Mark 1 here, so you can see that what was the size of the Mark 1 computers. Okay, you can see it and you can imagine it by seeing that how long it must be and how much space it required to run it and how much complicated it must be, right? Now, further, Mark 1 computer were having some flaws, some errors. It had some flaws and errors. So, development and new inventions in Mark 1, it led to the invention of the ENIAC 1. Okay, it led to the invention of the ENIAC 1. Now, it was developed by, ENIAC was developed by J.P. Eckert and John Mauchly in 1946. Okay, it was developed by two scientists, J.P. Eckert and John Mauchly in 1946. Okay, now it occupied 680 square feet area. So you can imagine how long it must be still. Okay, now what is the full form of ENIAC? ENIAC stands for Electronic Numerical Integrator and Calculator. Okay, what is the full form of ENIAC? Electronic Numerical Integrator and Calculator. Okay, now it was the first fully electronic digital computer. Okay, it was the first fully electronic digital computer. Now, further you can see that the development of the ENIAC, I have put one image in the second column and the bottom part. If you will see the middle picture, that is image is nothing but the picture of the ENIAC computer. Okay. Now, further also it ENIAC again had some flaws. It needed some development, and the development in ENIAC it led to the invention of the UNIVAC 1, and UNIVAC is the third development in the first generation computers. Okay, now let us study what is under UNIVAC. It was developed by J. Presper Eckert and John Mauchly in 1951. Okay, it was developed by J. Presper Eckert and John Mauchly in 1951. It was also as large as Mark 1 and ENIAC. Okay, so the size was not no different from Mark 1 and ENIAC. Okay, size was same. No resizing, nothing. Size was almost the same as compared to Mark 1 and ENIAC. Okay, now UNIVAC stands for Universal Automatic Computer. What it stands for? Universal Automatic Computer 1. What is the full form of UNIVAC? Universal Automatic Computer 1. It could handle both numeric and text data. Okay, so the further development, the new invention in the UNIVAC was it could handle both numeric and text data. Okay, then you can see an image of the UNIVAC computers. It was a bit smaller in size than the Mark 1 and ENIAC, but not much difference. It was almost the same, and you can see the how the three examples of the first generation computers looks like, and imagine the size of your computer that you are using now in your home. Okay, so there is a much development, right? Okay, so till now you have studied the first generation computers, and in the first generation computers you have studied the three examples. First is Mark 1, ENIAC and UNIVAC 1. Now moving on, now you have studied the first generation computers, right? And you can you know also know that the first generation computers, it was very huge in size. Now due to this size and weight, large weight, there were some limitations in the first generation computers. And what was the limitations? Speed was very slow, right? Since it was very much huge in size, its speed was very slow. Okay, then it required power consumption was very much high. It required high power for running, since it was very huge in size. Also it required large space for installation. It required a huge room to install that the first generation computer, right? Since it was very much large in size, and it was having a very large weight, it required large space for installation. Now since it required large space for the installation, it was very heavy, it was very huge in weight also. Since these three problems were there, the fourth problem came into existence, that this computer generated a lots of heat. Okay, it generated lots of heat, and problems were there that this generation computers started to fail very fast. Okay, now since it was very huge in size and it required a lot of time for consumption, for power consumption, for installation, for processing, so therefore they were very costly. Okay, so therefore they were very costly. So these all limitations, to overcome this limitation, scientists developed the few more generation computers, and these all five limitations, it gave rise to the invention of the second generation computers that you will study further. Okay, so moving on. Now, to overcome the limitations of the second generation computers, uh, further more developments were done, and this gave rise to the development of the second generation computers, and it was used between 1956 to 1963. Between this period, the second generation computers were used. Now I have said that first generation computers used vacuum tubes. Now, what is the vacuum tubes? I have said you that it is the device which controls the flow of the electric current, right? Now, in the same way, the second generation computers used the transistors in place of vacuum tubes. Now, transistors is also a type of device which does the same work as the vacuum tubes. Okay. Now, since they used transistors, they were very smaller in size as compared to the first generation computers. They were smaller, faster and more efficient than the first generation computers. They were smaller in size, right, as compared to first generation computers. They were also faster, they were giving quick results, and they were processing more fast in a more efficient way than the first generation computers. Now, and also they were cheaper than the first generation computers, right? Since these developments were done, they were also cheaper, means what, less costlier than the first generation computers. Now the second generation computers, to develop in more efficient way, in more flexible way, in more user friendly way, further development were done, further inventions were done in the second generation computers, and that gave rise to the invention of the third generation computers. Okay, now to make the computers in the more flexible, more efficient way, in more user friendly way. Some more inventions were done, and that it gave rise to the third generation computers. Now this third generation computers were used between 1964 to 1971. Between this period, this third generation were used. Okay. Now the first generation computer used vacuum tubes. The second generation computer used what? uh, what they used? They used transistors. Now further the development was done. The third generation computers used integrated circuits. Now the integrated circuit is, it is also the type of device, and its function was also similar to the transistors, only to reduce the size and the make computer more efficient. The integrated circuits were used. Okay. Now, since integrated circuits were used, they were smaller in size. Again, the size of computer reduced, and since the size of computer reduced, they were also cheaper as compared to the second generation computers. It was less costlier than the second generation computers. Now, since the size of the computer reduced due to the usage of integrated circuits, its storage capacities were increased. You were able to store much more information than the information that you have stored in the you have been storing in the second generation computers. Okay. Its storage capacity were increased. Now due to this, many new input devices were invented. Okay. Since storage capacities were increased, many new input devices came into existence. Now input devices as in like scanner. You all know nowadays what is meant by scanner. It is used to scan a document, right? Scanner is used to scan a document, and that document is presented in the image form on the screen, right? Are you getting it? What is meant by scanner? You just have to scan your document on the scanner, just like you are scanning your documents on the Xerox copy machine. Like that similar way, you have to scan this document on the scanner, and that document is presented in the uh, image form on your screen, right? So since storage capacities were increased, due to this many new input devices like scanner came into the market. Now you know that what were the developments were done. Okay. Since the first generation computers, how the sizes are reduced, what were the changes done, right? Okay. So moving on, the further more developments were done, and that developments led to the invention of the fourth generation computers. Okay. Now the fourth generation computers that we are going to study. Okay. These computers we are using it since 1971. Okay. From 1971 we have been using this generation of computers. Now at the end of this screen you will see one image. Okay. The same you will see a computer in that image, and the same type of computers comes under the fourth generation computers. Now the computers which you are using now in your homes, that comes under the fourth generation computers. Okay. So the very first point under fourth generation computers is the computers we use now are of this generation. Means the computers which you are using now in your home, that comes under the fourth generation computers. Okay. They use the large scale integrated circuits and very large scale integrated circuits. Okay. The first generation computer used what? Vacuum tubes. Second generation used what? Transistors. And the third generation used what? Integrated circuits. Now furthermore development, the fourth generation computers used what? Large scale integrated circuits and very large scale integrated circuits. Okay. It is the further development in the integrated circuits, right? And it is also a type of device. It also performs the same functions as the functions performed by vacuum tubes, transistors and integrated circuits. Okay. So the fourth generation computers used what? Large scale integrated circuits and very large scale integrated circuits. They have greater computing power and extremely large memory as compared with the computers of the earlier generations. Now since the new developments were done, new inventions were done in the earlier generations, now the fourth generation computers had the greater computing power. It had the greater processing power, and it had extremely large memory to store your information. Okay, and this extremely large memory, it was very much useful for the user to store any type of data inside the computer. It made a man's work very much easy to store it in the required information. Okay, so since the fourth generation computers had the large memory, it processing power was also very much fast as compared to the earlier generations. These computers were also been able to link with the internet. Now everyone knows what is internet nowadays. Okay, so these computers, the fourth generation computers, were been able to link with the internet to have the information around the globe, right? Now, till the fourth generation computers, the efforts were on what? Hardware making, to reduce the hardware size, to reduce the storage size, to reduce its length. The efforts were mainly on what? Hardware making only. Till the fourth generation of computers, efforts were on hardware making only. Now, this resulted what? In smaller size, less cost of computers, and also enhanced the speed of computers. Now since hardware size were extremely reduced till the fourth generation computers, this resulted in what? Smaller size, lesser cost of computers, and also enhanced the speed of computers as compared to the previous generations. Now moving on, now further, after doing more research and doing more developments and inventions, the fifth generation computers uh, came into existence. It is not fully into existence still, but after developing such a huge range of series in the fourth generation computers, now man had become very much ambitious. He wants to do more things, and scientists are now doing research in this field. Okay, we can say that the fifth generation computers are also called as the supercomputers. And why it is called as the supercomputers? Because that the fifth generation computers will be having the ability to take its own decisions. Okay, and this own decisions taking and this technology is based on what? Artificial intelligence. So in short, I will say what is meant by artificial intelligence, because you are going to study about artificial intelligence in higher standard. So just explanation I will give what is meant by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is nothing but a type of technology that you don't have to instruct every time to computer. Okay, you have to do this task, you have to perform this task. Okay, the computer will take its own decisions and will perform accordingly the due to this technology called as artificial intelligence. You don't have to instruct the computers in this technology. Okay, now these fifth generation computers, these type of computers are called what? Supercomputers. And supercomputers are widely used in the space research organizations like NASA, ISRO, right? ISRO, what is the full form of ISRO? Indian Space Research Organization, right? These type of computers are used in space research organizations because they are having the ability to take their own decisions. Okay, fine. So here we have completed this chapter. I hope you have all understood what I was trying to convey to you, what I was trying to discuss with you. Okay. So I'm attaching a worksheet with this video. You have to just solve that worksheet and send it back to me to via my email. Okay, so I will correct them and I will send it back to you. All the answers which you will require, which you are required to do in your worksheet, it is all the answers you will find in this video only. So listen to this video carefully and understand it. Only then you will be able to solve this worksheet which I am attaching with this video. Okay, till then, goodbye, take care.